J.J. Abrams rebooted the Star Trek franchise in 2009, and the 3 films in the new Kelvin timeline have been huge successes since then. The first Trek reboot, Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond, both released in 2013, have grossed more than $1 billion at the global box office. With all of that love, it seems pretty obvious that Hollywood would want to get Star Trek IV to theater screens as quickly as possible. The road to Star Trek IV, on the other hand, has not been easy. Instead, it's one filled with starts and stops, various creatives coming and going, and a release date that keeps getting beamed all over the place. So what do we know about the 4th installment of the Star Trek reboot series, and what will it look like when it finally makes first contact? So here's everything we know about Star Trek IV so far. Star Trek IV has been in development for a really long time. The Hollywood Reporter reported in June 2015 that Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto had signed on for Star Trek IV. For context, Barack Obama was still president, Phase 3 of the MCU hadn't begun, and Star Wars: The Force Awakens was still months away from becoming the highest-grossing film of the year. Despite the passage of time, there has been no sign of Star Trek IV. Pine and Chris Hemsworth allegedly left a potential 4th project in 2018 due to pay disagreements, and the film was shelved in 2019. Eventually, the project regained momentum and received a release date of June 9, 2023, but that was later pushed back to December 22, 2023, before disappearing entirely from the release schedule. To put it another way, we don't know when Star Trek IV will be released. However, there is reason to believe that it is still in the works. I think what they're still working on is a version of what I've been working on for the time that I was involved, former director Matt Shakman told Collider. With that, it appears that the Enterprise is still making its way to theaters, though we have no idea when it will do so. There are currently no plot details for the upcoming 4th Star Trek film, but we can assume it will take place after the events of 2016's Star Trek Beyond, directed by Justin Lin. In Star Trek Beyond, Kirk and the crew of the USS Enterprise witness their beloved ship crash on the planet Altamide after being ambushed by Idris Elba's Captain Balthazar Edison, a pre-Federation human soldier. When Kirk and the gang discovered Edison's plans to destroy the Federation with an ancient bioweapon, they were forced to stop him without the assistance of their ship. That film also saw the death of Leonard Nimoy's Ambassador Spock, as well as the end of Spock's relationship with Uhura. A time-traveling reunion between Captain Kirk and his father, George, is one story we know Star Trek IV will not explore. Chris Hemsworth played George Kirk briefly in 2009 Star Trek, but turned down the opportunity to reprise the role in a larger story in 2018. Star Trek IV will also not be linked to any of the current Star Trek TV shows, such as Star Trek Picard or Star Trek Below Decks, because those shows take place in a universe distinct from the Kelvin timeline. You'd think that a Star Trek film set in the Kelvin timeline would feature the reunion of the original crew. You would indeed. However, nothing about getting Star Trek IV off the ground has been easy, including reuniting the original cast. Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth reportedly walked away from the project in 2018 due to pay disagreements. When producer J.J. Abrams announced in February 2022 that Star Trek IV was finally moving forward, it brought with it its own behind-the-scenes drama. According to Variety, while Abrams stated that the original cast members would return, none of the actors had officially agreed to the project, which seems like a pretty important step in getting the film made. When asked about the film, the actors all seem to have the same "sure, it'd be fun, but I'll believe it when I see it" attitude. I think everybody was like, "Did you hear about this?" Pine told Variety in March 2022 about his reaction to the Star Trek IV announcement. "We're usually the last to find out, but I can tell you we're all very excited. We're ready to receive scripts whenever they want." Carl Urban took a similar stance, telling the UK's Radio X in May 2022, "I have heard that it is happening, but I've been hearing that for the last 3 years. All I know is that they're working on it, that a script is being written, and that we all want to come back and do it. So I think it's all just a matter of logistics and timing at this point. I would love to see Jayla evolve with all the guys," said Sofia Boutella, who played Jayla in Star Trek Beyond. "I'd like to see her again because I adore her. That was a fantastic experience for me. I would do it in a heartbeat." Zachary Quinto, on the other hand, appears to be wary of the situation. During an interview with The Independent in November 2022, the actor who played Spock stated, "At this point, I honestly have very little attachment to it. We'd all like to come back and make another film, but I've learned to only get excited about things I know are real, and there's nothing about a fourth Star Trek film that feels real right now." Anton Yelchin played Pavel Chekhov, one of the most iconic original Star Trek characters. Of course, Yelchin was tragically killed in a car accident in June 2016, just a month before Star Trek Beyond was released. His death was felt not only by fans, but also by his Star Trek colleagues. Obviously, it's bittersweet because we are coming together for a fourth time, and one of us is no longer with us with Anton's passing, but we honestly feel that going back and keeping the Star Trek family together is a way to really keep him alive in our thoughts and hearts, because he was such a fan. Uhura actress Zoe Saldana told Entertainment Tonight about the project in March 2022, when the movie was still moving forward under director Matt Shakman, and he was such a dedicated artist to both the craft and Star Trek. Of course, that version of Star Trek IV is no longer in the works, but if Saldana's comments indicate that Paramount will not be recasting the role of Chekhov, you're probably correct. In a 2016 interview with Post Media Network, shortly after Yelchin's death, producer J.J. Abrams stated, "I would say there's no replacing him. There is no possibility of recasting. That is inconceivable to me, and Anton deserves better." To be sure, when Abrams said they wouldn't replace Yelchin, emotions were running high. However, in the years since the actor's death, there has been no indication that a new Chekhov will appear on the bridge of the Enterprise. Who is in charge of directing Star Trek IV? The fact that Paramount Pictures is having difficulty finding a director is possibly the main reason that Star Trek IV has yet to happen. For a brief moment, it appeared that Quentin Tarantino was about to venture into uncharted territory. According to Variety, Tarantino's time-traveling concept of sending Kirk and company to a world of 1930s gangsters, similar to the original series episode A Piece of the Action, piqued J.J. Abrams' interest. The script was set to be written by Mark L. Smith of The Revenant fame, but sadly for Trekkies who wanted to see Spock quote Ezekiel 25:17, Tarantino's vision never came to fruition. Then it appeared that S.J. Clarkson would be the first woman to direct a Star Trek film. However, the film was cancelled after Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth left the project in 2018. Noah Hawley of Fargo fame was also working on a Star Trek film, one about a completely new group of heroes, but Paramount eventually intervened and shut things down because it wouldn't have featured the famous Enterprise crew. Star Trek IV came the closest to becoming a reality when Matt Shakman took over as captain. The world was Shakman's oyster after directing the entirety of WandaVision, and he intended to shepherd the newest entry in the Star Trek universe to theater screens.